recovers from the torn Achilles, and he is essentially ready for Syracuse spring ball, which would be awesome for the Orange. If and when Steve Angeli is healthy, I would say there is a 99% chance that he would be the starting quarterback for Syracuse in 2026. And also, I want you to keep this in mind. Because Steve Angeli got injured so early in the season, it was in week 4, it was in his 4th game of action. Because he got hurt so early, well, he is now potentially eligible to get a medical redshirt year. That means that really the 2025 season doesn't count for Steve Angeli. He will have eligibility for 2026, which would have been his final year of college eligibility. But now it is very likely Steve Angeli will also have college eligibility for the 2027 season. That's right. That was the silver lining, honestly, of when the injury happened, is that it happened during the 4th game. Therefore, Angeli could easily apply for a medical redshirt, and he will likely get one from the NCAA because that's the rules according to the NCAA, but you never know. It's the NCAA, and when do they ever do Syracuse many favors, right? But regardless, let's talk about that 1% chance that Angeli is not the quarterback of the team, even if he's healthy, because there is a remote chance that we have to go over here. We're going over a ton of different scenarios on this podcast. Number one, and we sort of talked about this yesterday in the pros and cons of sticking with Rickie Collins, which is that Rickie Collins has time to turn it around this season. And I'm rooting for this to happen. I would love for Rickie Collins for the final 6 games to play outstanding football and look like a guy who could be a starting quarterback for Syracuse in 2026 and potentially 2027 as well. I would love if he played at a level to where we're saying, I don't think that Steve Angeli, if healthy, should be the starting quarterback because Rickie Collins is playing at such a high level. And I still, as down as I am on Rickie Collins, the best way to put it is that I still do have the door very slightly open that he could turn it around because it has only been 2 starts. Granted, he's been now in college for 3 years. He's had plenty of time to learn the game. He's had plenty of time to learn Syracuse's system. He's had plenty of time to develop chemistry with everyone, and it seems like he's got a good infrastructure around him. A lot of his struggles are purely on him. So I don't think it's going to happen. That's why I'm saying 1% chance that he would be the starting quarterback potentially next year, even if Steve Angeli were healthy. But I do leave that as a very small, remote possibility that Rickie Collins turns it around because he's got 6 games left. The other possible starter for 2026, even if Steve Angeli is healthy, is that Luke Carney is awesome and that he gets the nod for Syracuse. And it's similar to Rickie Collins in the sense that Luke Carney comes into action and he plays at an extremely high level. But even more so that, it's also with the eligibility of him and the fact that, hey, if he plays this year and burns a year of eligibility and looks really good, you might want to just consider giving him the job for 2026. You might or not. We'll see what Syracuse decides to do. But with all that being said, assuming that Steve Angeli comes back and he's healthy in the spring, or even he comes back during fall camp, he's most likely 99% chance going to be the starter for Syracuse football. And assuming that he is the starter of Syracuse football, here's what likely happens. I think Rickie Collins at this point is a prime candidate to re-enter the transfer portal. I thought there was a possibility he would enter the transfer portal after they got Steve Angeli, but he didn't. Credit to him for wanting to stick around and wanting to compete for the starting quarterback job. I know a lot of players who probably would have just packed it up and left at that point. But no, Rickie Collins decided to stay. More power to him. Now he really is getting his shot, but I don't think he's going to turn it around. And with what's also coming in from behind him and the fact that he only has 2 more years of eligibility after this season, he's a prime candidate to enter the transfer portal, probably transfer down and get a starting quarterback job at a group of 5 school. Kind of like what Carlos Del Rio Wilson did, because he's doing pretty well right now at a G5 school. I forgot exactly. I think he's at Marshall, if I'm not mistaken. But hey, that could be the route that Rickie Collins decides to go to. You also got Luke Carney, who would have to make a decision. We went over that Steve Angeli could also be the starting quarterback in 2027. And we know all the young guys that are coming. That includes Luke Carney, but there are quarterbacks beyond just Luke Carney. See, lots of 2026 recruit. They also have a recruit for 2027, even though that's a long ways away, but they do have one, I think, by the name of Justin Dixon, if I am not mistaken. And so Luke Carney would have to make a decision on how long he's willing to wait. If he's willing to wait a couple of more years to be the starting quarterback because Steve Angeli got hurt, more power to him. If he decides to transfer because he wants an opportunity at some point to be a starting quarterback, more power to him. Either way, he would have a decision to make, assuming Steve Angeli is the starting quarterback. Odds are, I believe that Rickie Collins would transfer. Luke Carney would stay at least for 1 more year, and then we would reevaluate after the 2026 season. Because at this point, I think it's fairly likely, I think it's highly likely that the backup quarterback for Syracuse in 2026 will be Luke Carney. So he will be in a position where he's in right now, where he'll be 1 snap away from being the starting quarterback of Syracuse football. And it can happen. We're learning it this year that it is happening with Rickie Collins. All right, so that's the positive outlook. Steve Angeli, healthy, 99% chance the starting quarterback of Syracuse football. We just went over what would not make him the starting quarterback, which is essentially Rickie Collins or Luke Carney step up and play outstanding football. So you have to give him the job for 2026. But if he is the starting quarterback, most likely Rickie Collins enters the portal. Luke Carney would have a decision, likely comes back for 2026, and we'll see what happens beyond that.